Ronald Flip Murray, born July 29, 1979. Ronald Murray is one of those players you remember but can't quite explain, because for a stretch it really looked like he was next up. Stepping in for Ray Allen early in his career, Flip didn't just hold it down, he took off, scoring 20 or more in 10 of his first 11 starts and looking like a hidden gem the league had missed on. And coming from Division II, that only made it more impressive, but as fast as that moment came, it faded. The scoring never fully translated, the role never stuck, and the teams kept changing. Still, he stayed in the league for nearly a decade, which tells you he had real value, just not the kind teams build around. And that's where Flip Murray's story lives, in that space between flashes and consistency, where talent shows up but never settles in. A player good enough to make you believe, but never quite consistent enough to make teams commit. And over time, that gap between what he showed and what he sustained quietly became the difference between a breakout and just another name remembered for a moment. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it. Like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know who I should do next. Ronald Murray was a 6'3" guard from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, who took an unconventional path to the NBA compared to most players at his position. He attended Strawberry Mansion High School, where he built a reputation as a confident scorer before beginning his college career at Meridian Community College in Mississippi. After 2 seasons, he transferred to Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, a Division II program where his game took a major leap. During his senior season, Murray averaged over 25 points per game, leading Shaw to the Division II Final Four, and was named Division II National Player of the Year in 2002, establishing himself as one of the most productive scorers in the country despite the level of competition. Murray entered the 2002 NBA draft, where he wasn't expected to even be drafted, and was selected 42nd overall by the Milwaukee Bucks. As a rookie, he saw limited playing time, appearing in 12 games before being included in a major trade that sent Ray Allen, Kevin Ollie, and Murray to the Seattle Sonics in exchange for Gary Payton and Desmond Mason. He would go on to appear in just 2 games for Seattle that season, finishing his rookie career with a total of 14 NBA appearances, while still trying to find his footing at the professional level. Murray's nickname Flip came from his childhood in Philadelphia, where friends would say he resembled Bernie Mac's character Flip from the Above the Rim movie, a name that stayed with him throughout his basketball journey.
Walking up on me like John got it, baby. You don't want none of this here, boy. You don't want none of this here.
Stunt number 1, the Seattle Illusion. Ronald Murray's career didn't begin in Seattle, but it's where expectations around him were created. After playing just 14 total games as a rookie during the 02-03 season, he entered his second year with a little attention and no defined role. That changed early in the 03-04 season when Ray Allen suffered an ankle injury, forcing the Sonics to adjust their starting lineup and find scoring from unexpected places. Murray was inserted into the starting lineup, and almost immediately he produced at a level that caught the league off guard. Over an 11-game stretch early in the season, he scored 20 or more points in 10 of those games, stepping into a primary scoring role without hesitation. He had multiple standout performances during that run, including games of 29 and 31 points, showing an ability to create offense off the dribble and score in isolation situations. He showed the moment wasn't too big for him, and his amateur history only made him more hungry. For a player who had barely seen the court the year before, the jump in production was significant. What made the stretch even more notable was how Murray was scoring. He wasn't relying on plays being ran for him or benefiting from a structured offense. Instead, he operated with freedom, taking tough shots, attacking defenders one-on-one, and playing with a scorer's mentality. In that moment, he looked like a player capable of carrying offensive responsibility, not just contributing in small doses. But once Ray Allen returned to the lineup, Murray's role changed. His minutes decreased, his usage dropped, and the same scoring opportunities were no longer there. Without consistent touches, his production became less reliable, and the efficiency that teams look for in a starting guard didn't hold up over time. He still finished the season averaging around 12 points per game, but that number was heavily influenced by that early stretch. That period in Seattle created a perception that Murray could be more than a role player, that he had the potential to develop into a consistent scoring option. In reality, it was a short window where volume, opportunity, and timing all aligned. It showed what he could do in ideal conditions, but it didn't represent what he would consistently be over the course of his career. Stunt number 2, the tweener problem. As Murray's career moved forward, the biggest issue wasn't his ability to score, it was where he actually fit on the court. At 6'3", Murray fell into one of the most difficult categories in the NBA, the in-between guard. He wasn't a true point guard, but he also didn't have the size or skill set teams typically look for in a full-time shooting guard. And over time, that lack of a clear positional identity made it harder for teams to fully commit to him. When used as a point guard, Murray didn't naturally run an offense. He wasn't known for organizing teammates, controlling tempo, or consistently creating for others. His assist numbers reflected that, as he averaged under 3 assists per game for most of his career. His instinct was always to score first, which made him effective in short bursts but limited his ability to function as a full-time floor general. Possessions often ended with him taking the shot, whether it was the best option or not, which could disrupt an offensive rhythm over time. At the same time, playing him at shooting guard presented a different set of challenges. At 6'3", he was undersized compared to most players at that position, especially as the league began shifting toward bigger, more versatile wings. Defensively, this created mismatches that teams could exploit. Offensively, Murray didn't provide the kind of spacing teams needed from a two-guard either. He wasn't a consistent perimeter shooter, finishing his career around 30% from 3, which allowed defenses to sag off him and limit his impact when he didn't have the ball. This combination left Murray without a defined role. He could score, but he didn't bring the playmaking of a point guard or the size and shooting of a traditional shooting guard. As a result, teams began to view him as a situational player rather than someone they could rely on every night. He became more valuable as a scoring guard off the bench. As time went on, that positional uncertainty followed him from team to team. Coaches could use him, but they couldn't fully trust him in one role for extended periods. He was good enough to stay in the league, but not specialized enough to lock into a permanent spot. And in a league built on clearly defined roles and responsibilities, being caught in between ultimately made him easier to replace than to rely on long term. Stunt number 3, the Journeyman reality. After the early scoring flashes in Seattle and the ongoing question of whether he fit positionally, Flip Murray's career settled into a pattern that would ultimately define him. He became a journeyman. Not because he couldn't play, but because teams consistently viewed him the same way. Useful in moments, but not necessarily long-term. And once that label sticks in the NBA, it's hard to shake. Following his time with the Seattle Supersonics, Murray began moving from team to team over the course of his career. He played for multiple organizations, including Cleveland, Detroit, Indiana, Atlanta, Charlotte, and Chicago, rarely staying in one place long enough to establish continuity. In many of those stops, his role remained the same. He was brought in to provide scoring off the bench, give a team an offensive spark, and fill gaps when needed. But once those needs changed, so did his place on the roster. What made this cycle much more difficult for Murray was that his skill set didn't evolve much over time. He remained a score-first guard, but never developed into a consistent shooter or playmaker that could expand his role. His field goal percentages hovered around the low 40s, and his three-point shooting hovered around near 30% for his career. That meant when the scoring wasn't efficient, there wasn't another area of his game teams could lean on to justify keeping him in a larger role. There were still moments where Murray showed value. He had stretches in Cleveland and later in Atlanta where he contributed solid scoring numbers in limited minutes, proving he could still impact games in the right situation. But those contributions were always situational, not something teams could depend on every night over a full season. As the league continued to evolve, roles became more specialized. Teams began prioritizing guards who could either run an offense efficiently or space the floor at a high level. Murray didn't fully provide either at a consistent level, which made him easier to replace with younger, more defined players. By the time his career began to wind down, Murray had carved out a respectable run in the league, lasting nearly a decade. But the constant movement told the real story. He wasn't pushed out because he lacked talent. He stayed because he had enough of it. He just never became the type of player teams felt they needed to hold on to. All in all, Flip Murray carved out a solid NBA career that most second-round picks never reach. Almost a decade in the league, multiple teams, and plenty of moments where he proved he could score at a high level. But at the same time, his career always felt like it was caught in between. He showed just enough to make you think there was more there, but never enough for a team to fully commit to him long term. His early run in Seattle created expectations that followed him for years. It showed what he could look like with the ball in his hands and the freedom to play through mistakes. But as his role became more defined, so did his limitations. Without consistent efficiency and without another part of his game to fall back on, he became a player teams could use but not build around. And that's really where Flip Murray's story lands, not as a failure, not as someone who didn't belong, but as a player who lived in that middle space, good enough to stay, good enough to produce, but never quite able to lock in something permanent. A career built on opportunity, flashes, and moments that made you believe, even if they never fully came together over time. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. I'm out.